There are moments in history when pride becomes a species' greatest weakness, when arrogance blinds the powerful to the storm gathering on the horizon. This is the story of such a moment, when the ancient Crithian Empire made the fatal mistake of underestimating those they called primitives. In the vast expanse of the Andromeda sector, where stars burned like scattered diamonds against the void, Captain Rebecca Torres stood aboard the bridge of the human vessel Defiant Dawn. Her dark eyes reflected the swirling nebula outside the viewport, but her mind was elsewhere, calculating possibilities and preparing for what might come. Beside her, Lieutenant Owen Matsumoto monitored the sensor arrays with practiced efficiency, his fingers dancing across holographic controls that shimmered in the dim light of the command center. The Galactic Assembly had convened on Nexus Prime, a massive space station that served as neutral ground for over 60 civilizations. For 3 centuries, humanity had been the newest member, always watched, always judged, always treated as the inexperienced youngsters of the cosmic community. Rebecca had attended countless sessions where human proposals were dismissed with condescending smiles, where their territorial claims were overruled by elder species who believed age granted them absolute authority. Today would be different. Today, everything would change. The Crithian Dominion controlled 400 solar systems, their empire stretching across a quarter of known space. They were reptilian beings, towering creatures with obsidian scales that reflected light like polished armor. Their technology was ancient, their military undefeated for 8,000 years, and their diplomatic philosophy was simple and brutal. Might makes right. Ambassador Vexer, the Crithian representative, was perhaps the most feared diplomat in the entire assembly. Standing nearly 4 meters tall, his presence alone commanded attention, his voice like thunder when he spoke, his reputation built on the ruins of civilizations that had dared challenge Crithian supremacy. Rebecca received the emergency transmission while reviewing supply manifests in her ready room. The message was brief but devastating. The Crithian fleet had seized the horizon belt, a cluster of 7 planets that humanity had been terraforming for 2 decades. 30,000 human colonists now lived under Crithian occupation. The justification was simple and insulting. The Crithians claimed the territory had always belonged to them, that human settlements were illegal intrusions, and that humanity should be grateful the Dominion hadn't simply eliminated the colonists outright. "Captain, we're approaching Nexus Prime," Owen announced, pulling Rebecca from her thoughts. "The assembly session begins in 2 hours. All delegations are already aboard." Rebecca nodded slowly, her jaw set with determination. "Prepare the data cores. Everything we've documented about Crithian aggression, every treaty violation, every piece of evidence." Owen hesitated, his expression troubled. "Captain, with respect, evidence hasn't mattered before. The elder species always side with the Crithians. They're too powerful, too established. Challenging them directly could mean war." "Then war is what they'll have," Rebecca replied quietly, her voice carrying steel beneath the calm surface. "We've played by their rules for 3 centuries. We've been patient, diplomatic, accommodating. Where has it gotten us? Our people are prisoners on worlds we built with our own hands. No more, Owen. No more backing down." The docking procedure was smooth, the Defiant Dawn sliding into its designated berth alongside vessels from across the galaxy. The assembly hall was a marvel of engineering, a spherical chamber with seats arranged in concentric rings that could accommodate thousands of delegates. The oldest civilizations sat at the center, positions of honor earned through millennia of existence. Humanity's designated area was in the outermost ring, a location that served as a constant reminder of their status as galactic newcomers. Rebecca entered the hall with her delegation, 6 officers and diplomats who had spent years navigating the complex politics of interstellar relations. Dr. Nathan Park, humanity's chief xenobiologist, walked beside her, his scientific mind always analyzing, always questioning. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, head of security, scanned the chamber with trained eyes, noting exits and potential threats. They were professionals, but even they couldn't hide the tension in their shoulders, the awareness that they were walking into a confrontation that could reshape human destiny. Ambassador Vexer was already present, seated in the third inner ring, a position reflecting Crithian power. His scales gleamed under the hall's bioluminescent lighting, each one a testament to battles fought and won. His golden, slit-pupiled eyes tracked Rebecca's entrance with predatory focus. Around him sat his advisors, other Crithians whose mere presence intimidated lesser species. They exuded confidence, the absolute certainty of beings who had never known defeat. The session was called to order by Elder Omnath, a member of the Celestian Collective, beings of pure energy who had achieved transcendence millennia ago. Omnath's voice resonated through translation devices, a sound like wind chimes mixed with distant thunder. The assembly recognizes Captain Rebecca Torres of humanity. The floor is yours. Rebecca stood, her human uniform simple compared to the elaborate garments worn by other delegates. She walked to the central speaking platform, aware of every eye in the chamber watching her, judging her, most already dismissing whenever she might say. The holographic display activated at her command, showing images of the horizon belt before and after Crithian occupation. Honored delegates, Rebecca began, her voice clear and steady. 3 weeks ago, the Crithian Dominion invaded human territory without provocation or warning. They seized 7 planets, displaced 30,000 colonists, and claimed ownership based on nothing more than their desire for expansion. This is not the first time the Crithians have engaged in such aggression. Our records show 43 similar incidents involving other species over the past 5 centuries. A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembly. Several species exchanged uncomfortable glances, remembering their own encounters with Crithian expansionism. But none spoke in support. They had learned long ago that challenging the Dominion brought only suffering. Ambassador Vexer rose without waiting for permission, his massive form dominating the chamber. The human speaks of territory as if she understands such concepts. The horizon belt lies within the Crithian sphere of influence, a region we have controlled since before humanity discovered fire. Your settlements were built without proper authorization, without respect for established boundaries. We have been generous by allowing your colonists to live. Generous? Rebecca's voice cut through the air like a blade. You call occupation generous? You call the imprisonment of 30,000 civilians generous? The horizon belt was unclaimed territory. We filed proper documentation with the assembly. We followed every protocol. Vexer descended from his seat, his footsteps thundering on the polished floor as he approached the platform. The distance between them closed, and Rebecca found herself staring up at a being more than twice her height, whose presence alone had made entire civilizations surrender without a single shot. Protocols are for species that possess the strength to enforce them, Vexer rumbled. Humanity is weak. You have existed in this galaxy for mere centuries. You possess perhaps 500 worlds, a military that would not survive a week against real opposition. You are children playing games you do not understand. He turned to address the full assembly, his words calculated to humiliate. I propose a solution that will spare humanity unnecessary suffering. The Crithian Dominion will assume administrative control of 65% of human territory. In exchange, we will provide protection for the remaining 35%. This is more than fair, considering humanity's complete inability to defend themselves against actual threats. The chamber exploded in shocked conversation. 65% was not a compromise, but a conquest disguised as diplomacy. Several delegates looked at the human delegation with sympathy, but none offered support. They had all faced similar choices, all been forced to surrender pride and territory to survive. Elder Omnath raised a glowing appendage for silence. Ambassador Vexer, such a proposal requires careful consideration. Consideration is unnecessary, Vexer interrupted, his golden eyes fixed on Rebecca. The Crithian Dominion offers humanity 40 standard days to accept these terms. Should they refuse, we will be forced to implement corrective measures. We have pacified 19 species who made similar mistakes. All of them eventually understood the wisdom of cooperation. Rebecca felt the weight of history pressing down on her. 19 species. 19 civilizations that had been broken, absorbed, their independence erased. The Assembly had watched it happen 19 times, and each time they had done nothing, unwilling to risk their own safety for abstract concepts like justice or sovereignty. How long did it take? Rebecca asked, her voice cutting through the murmurs. How long did it take to crush 19 civilizations? Vexer smiled, showing rows of serrated teeth. Some accepted reality within weeks. Others required years of persuasion. One particularly stubborn species held out for 3 decades before their population was reduced to levels that made resistance impossible. He leaned closer, his breath warm and carrying the scent of sulfur. I tell you this not to frighten you, human, but to help you understand reality. The Crithian Dominion cannot be opposed. We have existed for 8,000 years. We have conquered territories spanning 400 systems. We possess weapons that could sterilize your homeworld in hours. Accept our terms, or join those 19 species in the historical records as examples of feudal pride. The chamber waited for Rebecca's response, expecting submission or angry defiance that would ultimately mean nothing. Instead, she smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach her eyes. 40 days, she said quietly. Humanity requests the full 40 days to consider the Dominion's terms. We will deliver our response at the designated time. Vexer straightened, satisfaction clear in his posture. Wise choice, human. Use your time well. Begin evacuating personnel from the territories you cannot keep. Prepare your people for transition to Crithian administration. Accept the inevitable. As the session concluded, several delegates approached Rebecca with quiet words of condolence. The Talorian representative, an insectoid creature, stopped beside her. My people faced a similar situation 600 years ago, the Talorian said softly. We surrendered 40% of our territories. It was painful, but we survived. There is no shame in accepting reality when the alternative is extinction. How many ships did your people have? Rebecca asked. The Talorian seemed puzzled. Ships? Perhaps 200 warships at the time. Why does this matter? Just curious, Rebecca replied. Thank you for your concern. As the human delegation made their way back to the Defiant Dawn, Dr. Park walked beside Rebecca, his expression troubled. They expect us to fold. They think we're terrified. I know, Rebecca said quietly. They have no idea what we've been building in the outer colonies, he continued. I know, she repeated. The Assembly has maintained peace for 12,000 years. If we do this, we're changing everything. Rebecca stopped walking and turned to face her delegation. Around them, a massive docking bay hummed with activity, ships coming and going, species from across the galaxy pursuing their own agendas, none of them aware that the foundation of galactic order was about to shatter. The Crithians broke the peace when they decided humanity was weak enough to exploit, Rebecca said, her voice hard as steel. We're going to show them what happens when predators mistake patience for weakness. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from the stars. See you next time. For 3 days, Rebecca's ship, the Defiant Dawn, raced back towards human space. But she wasn't just traveling. She was orchestrating. Secure channels lit up, connecting colonies and military posts the galaxy thought were just simple mining outposts. These weren't just colonies. They were nodes in a web of resistance, spun in secret for decades. Lieutenant Owen Matsumoto watched beside her, his jaw dropping as the tactical display filled with human fleet positions. Captain, he breathed, how long have we been building all of this? Rebecca's fingers danced over the holographic charts. "Since the day we joined the Galactic Assembly," she said, "every time they dismissed us, every time they smiled condescendingly and told us to know our place, we were learning. We were preparing for the day diplomacy would fail, and strength would be the only language left." The display focused on the outer rim, a sector the Assembly considered a backwater. Human settlements that were small, quiet, with no visible military. Crithian intelligence had scanned it countless times and seen nothing of value. They were so wrong. Dr. Nathan Park walked in, a data tablet in hand. "Captain, confirmation from all 17 hidden shipyards. Production is complete. The fleet is ready." 17 shipyards, disguised as asteroid mines, had been churning out warships with technology humanity had never shared. For 300 years, we played the part of the naive newcomers. But we were studying. We analyzed every war in galactic history, looking for cracks in supposedly unbeatable military doctrines. The Crithian Empire, with its 8,000 years of victories, thought they were invincible. They had crushed 19 civilizations using the same playbook every single time. Their methods were ancient, refined, and completely predictable. We didn't just study the Crithians. We studied the 19 civilizations they defeated. We saw the patterns, the predictable responses. We realized their greatest strength, their unwavering ancient strategy, was also their greatest weakness. They never adapted because they never had to. A call came in from Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka on the stealth ship Shadow Walker. "Captain, we're seeing increased Dominion activity near the horizon belt. They're building permanent bases on all 7 planets. It looks like they're settling in for a long occupation." "Let them," Rebecca said, her voice calm and steady. "Let them pour resources into territory they think they've already won. Every soldier they station, there is one less soldier defending their core systems." Yuki looked concerned. "Captain, what about our colonists on those worlds? They'll be caught in the middle when the fighting starts." "I know." Rebecca's voice grew heavy. "And that's why the first wave isn't going there. We're going after something the Crithians value far more than 7 frontier worlds." She brought up a new display, showing the heart of the Crithian Dominion, their homeworld, Krithos Prime, a massive, glittering planet orbited by defense stations that had never once fired a shot in anger. "We're going for their home," Dr. Park said, the realization hitting him. "Not their military, not their shipyards. We're going straight for the one place they think is untouchable." Rebecca nodded. "Every species they conquered tried to fight their military head-on. They all tried to match strength against strength, and they all failed. But they've never faced an enemy willing to just bypass their military entirely." Owen was already pulling up historical data. The Valmorians defended their borders. The Synthax tried to outproduce them. The Torvani fought a war of attrition. They all fought the war the Crithians wanted them to fight. "Exactly," Rebecca confirmed. "The Crithians are so used to winning, they've forgotten what it feels like to be vulnerable. Their homeworld hasn't been threatened in 8 millennia. Their civilians have never known fear. We're about to teach them that lesson." The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Frederick Okonkwo, commander of humanity's hidden battle fleet. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship, the Relentless, was a hive of activity. "Captain Torres," his deep voice boomed with authority, "all fleet groups are assembled. We have 3,000 warships positioned along 15 different vectors. They won't see us coming until we're already past their defenses. 3,000 warships. A force built in total secrecy, rivaling the largest fleets in the galaxy. Every ship was a ghost, crewed by personnel trained in isolation, armed with weapons the galaxy had never seen. Railguns that could tear through standard shields like paper. Missiles with a high targeting that could overwhelm any defense grid. Electronic warfare suites that would turn the enemy's own systems against them. But our most powerful weapon wasn't made of metal and energy. It was psychological. "Admiral," What's the status of the infiltration teams? Rebecca asked. Okonkwo's face grew grim. All 20 teams are in position on Krithos Prime. They've been living among the civilian population for 18 months, totally undetected. When you give the word, they'll activate. These teams weren't soldiers. They were information warfare specialists. Their mission wasn't to break things, but to break minds. To shatter the very foundation of Krithian society. For 8,000 years, the Krithian people had been fed a narrative of invincibility. It was the bedrock of their culture, the belief that allowed them to conquer without guilt. Rebecca was about to detonate that belief. The broadcasts are ready, she said. When our fleet enters their home system, the teams will activate. Every screen, every holo display, every single communication device on Krithos Prime will show the same thing. Live footage of 3,000 human warships descending on their planet. Real-time analysis showing their orbital defenses are useless. Projections of what happens if we decide to open fire. Dr. Park looked uneasy. Captain, we're not actually going to attack civilians, are we? That would make us just like them. No, Rebecca said, her voice iron. We are not monsters. But they don't know that. For the first time in their history, the Krithian people are going to feel true fear. They will demand answers from their government. They will question everything. Owen nodded, looking at his console. The collapse of old empires wasn't always military. It was when the people lost faith in the story they were being told. When they realized the system wasn't as strong as they thought. Precisely, Rebecca said. We're not destroying their empire with weapons. We're destroying it with the truth that they are vulnerable, the truth that their endless conquest has finally come with a cost. The tactical display showed the Krithian fleets, spread thin across hundreds of systems, complacent and unprepared for what was coming. They expected a conventional war. They were about to get something else entirely. 15 separate human fleets would strike simultaneously across their territory, creating chaos and confusion. And while their military scrambled to react, our main fleet would do the unthinkable. We would bypass it all and head straight for Krithos Prime. Not to destroy it, but to prove that we could. Admiral Okonkwo leaned in. Captain, we are 36 hours out. Once we begin, there's no turning back. The galaxy will never be the same. Are we certain this is the right path? Rebecca looked at her crew. She thought of the 30,000 colonists held hostage. She thought of Ambassador Vexer's arrogant smirk. She thought of a galaxy living in fear. Yes, Admiral, she said, her voice ringing with a certainty that echoed through the entire ship. It's time the galaxy learned that humanity does not accept its place. We make it. 300 years. 300 years. For 300 years, humanity has been patient. We followed every rule, respected every protocol, and accepted every insult, all because we believed in the promise of a civilized galactic society. But the Krithians have shown us that civilization is just a thin mask, covering the same brutal reality that has always existed. The strong take what they want, and the weak accept what they're given. But strength isn't just about military force or ancient empires. It's about the will to say no, to refuse to accept injustice, to risk everything for the right to exist on your own terms. We're not doing this because we want war. We're doing this because they left us no choice. The Krithians made a terrible mistake. They thought patience was weakness. They believe that because we've been peaceful, we're incapable of violence. Well, they're about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being forced into submission. The order was given. Operation Shattered Pride begins in 36 hours. As the flagship Defiant Dawn raced faster than light, 3,000 warships waited in the darkness between systems. On board, Dr. Nathan Park approached Captain Rebecca Torres. He'd been running simulations of the Krithian response. Their military doctrine was well documented. Once they realized what was happening, they would concentrate their forces around their homeworld, Krithos Prime. we'd be facing their entire defensive fleet. Even with our superior technology, we'd be outnumbered 3-1 in their home system. He voiced his concern. If the psychological warfare component didn't work, if the Krithian population didn't react the way we predicted, we could be starting a war we can't win. Rebecca turned to him, her expression serious but unafraid. She explained that the Krithians have been successful for 8,000 years, not just because of their military might, but because of their absolute conviction. When they decide to conquer a species, they don't hold back. That unwavering commitment breaks enemy morale before a single shot is fired. For 3 centuries, we've been careful, always considering every consequence. That caution has served us well, but it also made other species think we lack the spine for decisive action. The Krithians saw hesitation, uncertainty, weakness. They made their move because they were convinced we'd back down. Dr. Park's eyes widened with understanding. We're going to show them they were wrong. Rebecca agreed. More than that, we're going to show the entire galaxy that humanity isn't weak because we choose diplomacy, and we're not afraid because we avoid unnecessary conflict. We will demonstrate that the most dangerous enemy is the one who remains calm until the moment they strike, who plans carefully but acts decisively, who offers peace but is fully prepared for war. Just then, an urgent transmission came through. It was Ambassador Vexer of the Krithian Dominion contacting them directly from Nexus Prime. This was unusual. His imposing form filled the view screen, his golden eyes a mixture of amusement and contempt. He wanted to personally ensure Captain Torres understood the terms offered to humanity. 40 days to surrender. He warned her not to mistake their patience for weakness. Rebecca replied respectfully, but with an edge he didn't seem to notice. Humanity appreciated the time and would use every moment wisely. Vexer leaned closer. He spoke of his own history, of leading military operations against the Valmorian Confederacy, a proud, competent species that resisted Dominion authority. It took 3 years to break them completely. By the end, they begged for the original terms, but those terms were no longer on the table. They lost everything because they chose pride over pragmatism. He framed it as education, not a threat. The terms offered to humanity today, he said, were generous. Refuse them, and the ultimate settlement would be far less favorable. He gave her 40 days to decide if human pride was worth the cost. The transmission ended, leaving a heavy silence. Owen, one of her officers, was troubled. He can't even conceive that we might have other options. Rebecca's voice was quiet. That's the problem with being invincible for 8,000 years. You stop imagining scenarios where you might lose. You become predictable. She then addressed the entire crew of the Defiant Dawn. In 36 hours, they would begin operations that will determine the future of humanity. What they were about to do was dangerous, unprecedented, and would change everything. But she reminded them why. They weren't seeking conquest or revenge. They were demanding the simple right to exist as a free people. And if the Krithians wouldn't grant that right through diplomacy, then they would earn it through strength. Across the ship, the crew felt the weight of history settle on their shoulders. Some felt fear, some excitement, some grim determination. But all of them knew they were part of something larger than themselves. The Defiant Dawn sped on. Across hundreds of human worlds, families lived their lives, unaware that everything was about to change. On the occupied Horizon Belt, colonists believed they were abandoned, not knowing rescue was already in motion. And on Krithos Prime, billions of Krithians went about their day, secure in the knowledge that their empire was eternal. In 40 hours, all of those certainties would shatter like glass. The silence before the storm was almost peaceful. 3,000 human warships materialized from the darkness, a ghost fleet given form. Each ship was a secret, a testament to humanity's resolve. The fleet stretched across the void, a sight that would shock any species who thought humanity was too young to be a threat. Admiral Okonghu's face appeared on every command screen. This is the moment we've prepared for. The moment humanity stops asking for respect and starts commanding it. You are the finest warriors our species has ever produced. And today, you will show the galaxy what happens when predators mistake patience for weakness. Rebecca felt no fear, only a profound clarity of purpose. She thought of Ambassador Vexer's smug certainty that humanity would surrender. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Across the fleet, weapon systems activated. Shield generators hummed to life. 4, 3, 2, 1. Execute. Space itself seemed to tear apart. 3,000 warships dropped out of stealth simultaneously. 15 separate fleet groups appeared across Krithian territory, like lightning strikes from a clear sky. They targeted secure, untouchable installations. Communication relays exploded. Supply depots vanished in brilliant flashes. Military outposts sent frantic distress signals before being silenced forever. But the main fleet, the largest concentration of human military power ever assembled, defied all tactical doctrine. They bypassed every military target, ignored every defensive position, and headed straight for Krithus Prime. They moved with such speed and precision that the Dominion's early warning systems barely registered the intrusion before the human ships were already deep inside protected space. On Krithus Prime, it was just another day in an unshakable empire. Then every screen went dark. Every holographic display died. Every device fell silent. For 3 heartbeats, the entire planet held its breath in confusion. Then the screens came back to life, but they no longer showed entertainment or news. They showed the human fleet. 3,000 warships, closing in, weapons armed. The image was accompanied by a cold tactical analysis. Fleet composition, weapons capabilities, projected arrival time, and one last, devastating number. Estimated defensive response success rate, 42%. For 8,000 years, Krithian civilians had been told their homeworld was absolutely secure. Now they were shown, with cold precision, a 58% chance that their planetary defenses would fail. Panic began to spread. Parents grabbed their children. Workers abandoned their posts. In the Planetary Command Center, High Commander Thraxus stared at the displays, confirming his worst nightmare. How did they get this close without detection? He roared. A sensor officer, voice shaking, reported a stealth technology they had never encountered. By the time they were detected, it was already too late. Humanity was at their doorstep. The age of the Krithian Dominion was about to face its greatest test. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to follow for more. Thraxus pulled up fleet disposition reports, his eyes widening as he realized the true scope of the problem. The Dominion maintained powerful military forces, yes, but they were spread thin across 400 systems, policing occupied territories and intimidating potential rivals. To concentrate enough ships to defend their homeworld, Krithos Prime would take days, maybe even weeks. But the humans would be in orbit within hours. Recall all available fleets immediately, Thraxus ordered, his voice tight with urgency. Emergency priority. Every ship within response range is to converge on Krithos Prime at maximum speed. Activate all orbital defense platforms. Scramble every fighter squadron we have. I want weapons locked on those human ships the moment they enter range. But even as he gave the orders, Thraxus knew the cold mathematics were against him. The humans had planned this perfectly, exploiting the fundamental weakness of an empire that had become complacent through millennia of unchallenged dominance. The Krithian military was a giant, but its strength was dispersed. Bringing enough of it to bear would take time they simply didn't have. Aboard the human flagship, the Relentless, Admiral Okonghu watched the Krithian defensive response unfold exactly as their simulations had predicted. They're pulling ships from across their territory, he observed, a flicker of a smile on his lips. Every military vessel within 6 days' travel is burning toward Krythos Prime at maximum speed. They're leaving their occupied territories exposed, weakening their defensive postures everywhere else. It's perfect. Captain Rebecca Torres studied the tactical display, seeing the chaos they had created not as a risk, but as a golden opportunity. Admiral, I recommend we activate Phase 2. The Krythians are focused entirely on defending their homeworld. Their outer territories are vulnerable. Okonkwo nodded slowly, his smile turning grim. Agreed. All fleet groups initiate liberation operations. Target priority: the horizon belt. Let's bring our people home. Across the vast expanse of Krythian space, human warships that had seemed to be conducting random, annoying hit-and-run attacks suddenly revealed their true purpose. Fleet groups that the Krythians had dismissed as minor nuisances converged on occupied human territories with overwhelming, decisive force. The horizon belt, where 30,000 human colonists had been held for weeks under Dominion control, suddenly found itself surrounded by 200 human warships that appeared as if from nowhere. Their demand was simple: immediate surrender of all occupying forces. The Krythian garrison commander on Horizon 4 faced an impossible choice. He had 300 soldiers, 2 aging defensive platforms, and absolutely no possibility of reinforcement. Every available ship was racing toward Krythos Prime. Opposing him were 200 state-of-the-art human warships whose weapons could reduce his installations to ash within minutes. He tried to contact his superiors for orders, but his communication channels were jammed by sophisticated human electronic warfare systems that turned his own equipment against him. He surrendered within the hour. Similar scenes played out across all the occupied territories. Krythian forces that had been confident in their control just hours before suddenly found themselves isolated, outnumbered, and facing an enemy who fought with a precision and coordination that defied their supposed inexperience. Some garrisons chose to fight and were destroyed quickly and efficiently, but most chose to surrender when they realized that reinforcements were not coming. The Dominion's attention was focused elsewhere. They had been abandoned to face an enemy their empire had seriously, fatally underestimated. Back on Krythos Prime, the population watched in horror as evacuation orders were issued for major population centers. For the first time in 8,000 years, Krythian civilians were being told to flee because an enemy might actually attack their cities. The psychological impact was devastating. Parents struggled to explain to confused children why they had to leave their homes. Elderly Krythians who remembered the old stories of ancient wars suddenly realized they were living through a history they had believed would never repeat. Government officials tried to maintain order, broadcasting messages of assurance that the situation was under control, that reinforcements were on the way, that the Dominion's mighty military would protect them. But the unshakable confidence that had sustained Krythian society for millennia was cracking. People had seen the tactical analysis leaked by human intelligence. They had seen the numbers. A 42% chance of successful defense meant a 58% chance of failure. Those were not odds that inspired confidence when your entire civilization was hanging in the balance. Ambassador Vexer stood in his private chambers aboard the diplomatic station, watching the live feeds from Krythos Prime with a growing, burning fury. This was impossible. Humanity was supposed to be weak, frightened, preparing to surrender. Instead, they had launched a military operation of stunning audacity, striking at the very heart of the Dominion with forces that shouldn't even exist, using tactics that demonstrated a strategic genius far beyond what any species had given them credit for. His communication console chimed. Captain Rebecca Torres appeared on the screen, her expression calm and professional, showing none of the fear Vexer had expected. Ambassador Vexer, Rebecca said quietly, I believe we need to renegotiate the terms of our agreement. Vexer's golden eyes blazed with barely controlled rage. You dare threaten the Dominion? You dare attack our homeworld? This is an act of war that will result in humanity's complete destruction. Your species will be erased from galactic history. Perhaps, Rebecca replied, her tone maddeningly calm. Or perhaps this is the moment when the Krithian Dominion learns that empires built on conquest and intimidation eventually face an enemy who refuses to be intimidated. Your fleet is converging on Krithos Prime. That will take 4 more days. In the meantime, my ships are in a position to do whatever I choose to your homeworld. I could bombard your cities. I could destroy your orbital infrastructure. I could reduce 8,000 years of civilization to rubble. She paused, letting the implications sink in. But I won't, because unlike the Krithian Dominion, humanity doesn't believe that strength gives us the right to destroy those who are weaker. We're not here to conquer you. We're here to teach you a lesson. That vulnerable feeling you're experiencing right now, that fear for your homes and families, that uncertainty about whether your government can protect you. That's what every species you've conquered has felt. That's what you inflicted on 19 civilizations. That's what you threatened to do to us. Vexor's scales seemed to darken with fury. What do you want, human? Immediate withdrawal from all human territories, Rebecca said firmly. Release of all our colonists. Formal recognition of humanity's sovereignty. And most importantly, a guarantee that the Krithian Dominion will never again threaten human worlds. Impossible, Vexor snarled. The Dominion does not negotiate with species who attack us. We will destroy you for this insult. With what fleet, Ambassador? Rebecca asked calmly. Your ships are 4 days away. My fleet is in orbit above your homeworld right now. I'm holding 4 billion of your civilians hostage to ensure your good behavior. Except I'm not actually going to harm them because I'm not a monster. But your population doesn't know that. Right now, billions of your people are questioning everything your government has told them. They realizing that your 8,000 years of invincibility was based on never facing an enemy willing to take risks. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to recommend that the Dominion accept my terms. You're going to help your government understand that the era of Krithian dominance is over. Not because we destroyed you, but because we proved you could be threatened. And that's something your civilization will never psychologically recover from. The transmission ended, leaving Vexor alone with his rage and the terrible realization that she was right. The damage wasn't military. It was psychological. Even if the Dominion fleet arrived and drove the humans away, the fundamental belief that had sustained Krithian society for 8 millennia had been shattered. Their people had seen enemy ships in their sky. They had felt fear. 4 days later, High Commander Thraxus watched as the massive Krithian reinforcement fleet arrived at Krithos Prime, thousands of ships converging to defend their homeworld. But the human fleet was already withdrawing, pulling back with a careful precision that showed they had never intended to actually attack the planet. They had made their point. They had broken the psychological foundation of Krithian power without firing a single shot at a civilian target. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly, species that had spent centuries cowering before Krithian dominance now whispered in corners, recalculating their assumptions about power. Ambassador Vexor stood at the speaking platform, his posture lacking its usual absolute confidence. The Krithian Dominion acknowledges the legitimacy of human territorial claims. We will withdraw our forces from all disputed systems. We recognize humanity's right to exist as a sovereign civilization. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Rebecca Torres stood as well, her voice carrying clearly. Humanity accepts the Dominion's terms. We acted in self-defense, demonstrating our capability and our willingness to protect our sovereignty. We hope this marks the beginning of a new era, where strength is measured not by conquest, but by how you use your power to create a galaxy where all can coexist. As the session concluded, delegates from across the galaxy approached the humans with a mixture of awe and nervousness. The balance of power had shifted. Humanity had proven they were no longer naive newcomers. But more than that, they had demonstrated something the galaxy had forgotten. That true strength isn't about dominating others, but about standing firm for your principles. They had fought not to conquer, but to protect. Not to destroy, but to teach. The age of accepting whatever the powerful decided to impose had ended. And at the center of that transformation stood humanity, the species who had been patient enough to plan for 3 centuries, and bold enough to change the galaxy in a single devastating moment. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content like this. See you in the next one.